Thanks. My name is Dan Francis. I've been investing in real estate for 11 years now. You met my wife earlier. She stood up here and talked. She is the broker of our brokerage, Stepstone Realty. But we do all sorts of deals, and wholesaling is definitely one of my favorite things to do. I saw somebody else do this in a speech once, and I thought it was great, so I'm going to do it. How many of you here are wholesalers? See, once again, I was shocked in that room, and I'm shocked again because I feel like everybody should have their hand up. Because why? If you meet a seller and he has a deal that you don't necessarily want, would you not try to sell that deal? I think that's a large part of what we do here is we network and we meet people and we find out what they're looking for. And then when we run across something, we say, oh yeah, I know that guy wants that. And then you sell it to them. It's the easiest thing in the world. Greatest thing I love about wholesaling is that it is very, 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 very little risk. So I want to talk to you about the contract that we do for wholesaling. I use this 47-page, really tricky contract with 65 out clauses. I'm kidding. I use the TREC contract, just the regular one. It's pretty easy. The best thing about the TREC contract, anybody? It is free. That's a good one. I hadn't thought about that one. You can just download it. My favorite thing about it is the option period. Thing about the option period is it is an unrestricted right to terminate your contract at any time. So I always tell people, you know, I could just wake up in the morning and look outside and say, look, the sky's blue. I need to terminate. I don't even need a reason. It doesn't even have to be a bad one. I can just I can just terminate. I usually pay about $10 to get 30-day option period. So when I meet a seller and I want to talk to them about buying their property, I'm definitely, when I put it under contract, going to get an option period. I think an option period is fair, and I think 30 days is fair, and I think $10 is fair, and I'll tell you why. If I was going to go buy a house for myself to live in off the MLS, and I was just a regular person just buying a regular house, that probably wouldn't be fair. But that's not generally who I'm dealing with. I'm generally, I'm not dealing with a seller who's got a perfectly beautiful house and they've got it on the open market on the MLS, and they're needing it to get tied up for 7 days. Oh my God! Well, I want $100, and I only want you to have 7 days to do your inspections and your your due diligence to decide to buy this property. Our situation is a lot different. A lot of times the houses themselves are distressed, need a lot of repair. We don't know what we're going to find. We don't know what we're going to do. We don't even know what we're going to do with the property or the exit strategy of the property. I feel like I'm going to work for the seller, which I think is the difference. I think when you're a retail buyer, you're going to buy a property for yourself, going there to sell the seller that I'm their solution to a problem, and I'm coming there to go to work for them. And the way we make an arrangement to go to work is we go into contract. And so I want enough time to try to make money on that property, but I'm also trying to get them the most that I possibly can. So if I go out and I get contractors to look at this and really tell me what it's going to cost to repair, and I bring in private money or hard money and potential partners and potential buyers, that's a lot of work, right? So I need the time to do it, and I shouldn't have to pay to do it. I'll pay $10 just to make it a legal transaction. I think the setup in doing a wholesale is very important. First of all, I hope everybody has a basic understanding what wholesaling is. It's where you are putting a property under contract and then basically selling that paper. You're selling the contract. Rather than buying the house and then selling the house, you're just selling the contract or selling the right to buy a house. So when I meet with sellers, I like to set it up in a way that allows me to wholesale it. And the way I do that is by letting them know that I am there to work for them. So when we agree on a price, I tell them, hey, great, $120,000, I think that's something I can get you. I think I can get you $120,000. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do from this point is I'm going to go out and I'm going to talk to everybody in town. I know everybody in town. If anybody can get you $120,000, it's me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get contractors out here, try to beat them up, make sure we can get them down to a price. I'm going to drive comps and make sure that we can get what we think we can get for it when it's done, or maybe there's something cool we can do that'll allow us to get even more, like add square footage. I'm also going to talk to private money lenders, potential partners, and other investors who may want this property for a different reason than I may be looking at it. So I'm very honest and open with them that that's what I'm going to do, and then that's exactly what I do. I think a lot of people, when they go to wholesale, they put something under contract by convincing the seller they're going to buy it. And then when they go out and they try to get somebody to come look at it because they want to get a buyer and wholesale it, they have to tell them to put on a hard hat and carry a clipboard and pretend to be a contractor, right? We've all done that. So I think if I set it up in the way that I set it up, I have the opposite problem. Now I don't need to restrict the number of people I get out there. Now I need to get as many people out there as I possibly can to show them I really am going to work for them. And the other nice thing that it does is if I can't get a buyer to pay me what I have more than what I have it under contract for, it opens me up to renegotiate. Because they'll have seen how much work I've done. They'll see how many people I brought out. And then it's easy to go back to them and say, man, you saw these 30 people I brought out here, and I couldn't get anybody to get us that $120,000. But I did get somebody that we can close if you come down to 110. And most of the time they say yes. And I don't do that out of habit just to create a big giant spread for myself. I'm very fair to the sellers. But I do that when it's necessary, for sure. Or when my fee is so small because I'm worth it. So, yeah, go ahead.
So your assignment, what you get paid for your assignment, the seller never sees that?
So there's multiple ways to close a wholesale. That's a good question. So sometimes I don't care what the seller sees that I'm making. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't care what the buyer sees what I'm making. Sometimes I do. So there's multiple ways around that. I can do an assignment with the buyer. So if I have a buyer that says, hey, I'll give you 130 and I have it under contract for 110, and I feel like the buyer is going to be fine with the 10,000, but the seller might be a little squeamish about it, I could still do an assignment to the buyer and have it on the buyer side of the HUD, and then I can do a blind close where the seller only sees their half of the HUD. It's called a blind close. All right, so then the other way I can do it is if I don't want either side, or if I don't mind that both sides see it, then it's no big deal. Then you just do an assignment, regular HUDs, it's easy. But I can do a blind. I can either blind the seller or blind the buyer. You can't blind them. Can you blind them both? No, you one of them's always going to see the assignment fee. The other, I thought I saw a question. Well, if they're blind, they won't see that there's a fee on there. So the buyer only sees the buyer, or I'm sorry, yeah, the seller only sees the seller side of the HUD, the buyer only sees the buyer side of the HUD, and if the assignment fee is on the buyer side, then the seller doesn't see it. Yeah. Yes, you can do that. The other way to do it, if you don't want either side to see, is you can do what's known as a simultaneous close with pass-through funding. So essentially that means that you do an A-B transaction where you buy the property. You literally buy the property, you get the deed of the property, and then later that same day, usually, although it can be done the next day, you sell the property on a B-C to transaction, and the C money funds the A-B transaction. It's called pass-through funding. And then nobody sees what you made, which is sometimes what I want to do.
What are the thresholds that you go from a blind HUD to a double closing?
I don't know if there's an exact number. Real estate's not a science, it's an art. So it really just depends on my feel for the seller that I've spent a very long, hard time building a rapport with, and also with my buyers who I generally know I tend to sell to the same buyers over and over and over and over again. It just is easier. We know how to work together. It makes it go smooth. And B, they'll be fair because they want another one. And because I don't like to deal with just tons and tons of people, so it makes it a lot easier. Yeah. That's the same thing as it's just another word for simultaneous closing. Uh-huh. Yep.
Guys, wholesaling is a great way to get started, especially if you don't have a lot of money, because you only need to put a house under contract for a $10 option period and or $10 option fee and a $10 earnest money fee. It's a great way to make $5, $10, $15, $20, or more $1,000 as a real estate investor. A great way to learn and shadow other real estate investors as well.